Welcome to the Capstone Conversation, where you learn about what's happening in the greater East Bay. I am your host, Jared Asch. Today, I am joined by MCE, a power organization that impacts residents in Marin, Solano, Contra Costa. We have two amazing women from that organization, Jenna, Tenney, and Ackman. Ladies, thanks for joining me. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourselves and what is MCE?
MCE is California's first community choice provider. We were the first local not-for-profit public agency to provide customers with an alternative to their electricity service from the investor-owned utility. So here in the Bay Area, that's PG&E. We launched up in Marin County back in 2010, but we now serve close to 600,000 electric accounts across Marin, Napa, Contra Costa, and Solano. So what we do is we come in and replace PG&E's electric generation service with a very cost competitive, often less expensive, but not always, more renewable energy service option. And because we're a local government agency, we are able to provide clean energy programs and benefits and services that PG&E isn't, just because we are a smaller agency and we're able to tailor the work that we do to what our communities actually need. And PG&E doesn't have that level of flexibility. I've been with MCE about 8 years. I grew up in Contra Costa County, still live here, and have had a couple of different roles, but now oversee our communications efforts and community outreach. And JB, I'll let her introduce herself.
Thanks, Jenna. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs for MCE. One of our most critical roles is in communicating with and providing educational resources to the communities that we serve. That's one of the benefits of being a local government agency is that we have a board of directors that are locally elected officials representing all, and they get to weigh in on everything that we do that benefits their constituents, from how we set our rates to how we invest in programs that are going to help us as communities reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
I'll ask a basic question that most people get. You're generating and providing our power and doing that community outreach, but my bill still comes from PG&E. How does that work? What's that relationship like? Why are they the billing provider?
As I mentioned, MCE replaces just the generation portion of the bill. Your electricity service is multiple parts, and typically you're also getting your gas services from PG&E as well. So the bill that you get from PG&E is going to have your electric generation, your delivery and distribution, how that power actually gets to your home, all of the lines and wires, and your gas services, and then all of the other kind of additional charges that are charged by the state or other small things like that. MCE, when we come into a community, it's by vote of the local elected officials. So that would be city council, town council, or county board of supervisors. And we are an opt-out program by California state law. So it means when we enroll that community, every eligible customer is automatically enrolled in MCE service, and they can take action to opt out and return to PG&E. But if they choose to stay with us, because so much of their services are still with PG&E, we just become a line item on the PG&E bill. On your summary page, you would see that you're getting your PG&E delivery services from them, and you're getting your MCE generation services from us. And then you have a separate additional page in your bill that just describes what MCE is offering you. It makes things a lot smoother for customers as well, as opposed to getting an additional bill. And you can continue to pay it the way you normally would, whether that's by phone or you have recurring payments on your PG&E account. You're getting more renewable energy and all of the benefits of a local organization without really having to change much in your day-to-day.
Who do people call for customer service?
They would call us. MCE has a customer service team, and they can contact us via our website and via our 800 number available at mc.org. And we would encourage anyone who has questions about MC services, the charges they see on their bill, or the things that we might be able to help connect them with in terms of incentives and rebates. If you're interested in an EV purchase, for example, we have rebates for income eligible individuals available, and you can find information about the dealerships where those can be accessed on our website. We have lots of clean energy tips for people who are trying to just understand, like, how do they apply electrification in their own life? How do they change their stovetop to an induction stovetop, or what would they need to do to install a heat pump, air conditioning and heating system in their home? We have a number of electrification resources for individuals, and we hope to educate people about how our services are helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and how they can use the services that we offer to accelerate the transition to the clean energy economy.
Let's talk about that and how and why we're going to electrification and building codes that are changing, I think, in all four of the counties you represent to move to all electrification and at least in new construction. No, that means no gas for people who aren't familiar. Why is that? How does it work? Particularly, why are we moving to electrification? And why is that important to people out there?
Electrification is the next step. MCE got started in 2010, and we offered 28% renewable electricity compared to PG&E's, I think it was 13%, right? Big gap in that renewable energy that's available. And today we're 60% renewable. We offer a 100% renewable option, 95% greenhouse gas free. Our program alone, but also there are now 25 programs like ours around the state. We've significantly increased the amount of renewable energy that's available. Electricity used to be the greatest source of emissions in California, and now it's very low on that scale compared to other sources. For example, transportation's around 40%. Now that we've made that major shift towards renewable energy, the next pieces of that pie are looking at how do we reduce those emissions in those other sectors. And electrification is a really big part of that, both in buildings, but also in terms of transportation. JB, do you want to add anything to that?
I would just say that there are the other challenging component to making the electrification transition is ensuring that there is enough workforce that is well trained in the new technologies and can help customers understand their options when they're looking at electrified home appliances. That's another area where we have focused our investment in helping to identify programs that do workforce development and training, doing outreach to local contractors. But as part of the transition to electrification, that's going to be a really important component as we try to reach those state mandated clean air emissions reduction goals.
And there are a number of rebates available for customers today through MCE, but there's also the Homes and Here programs coming from the federal legislation through the state of California that'll hopefully roll out here in 2025. Can you talk about what are some of those rebates that customers should know?
I don't off the top of my head have specific rebates. MCE offers a number of different programs. I think what is really exciting is MCE just did a refresh of our website that launched mid-June. One of the really cool tools we added is a rebate finder, an incentive finder. Folks can go on our website and use that tool, and it's tailored to their specific need. You can enter your income, zip code, how many folks you have in your home, all of those requirements that are part of vetting rebates. Do you qualify for certain ones or not? You can enter all of that information, and it will give you a list of all the rebates that you're eligible for that we are aware of. That is not just MCE rebates, it's local rebates, federal rebates, all of those things. And I'm using the words rebates, but it's incentives, right? It could be rebates, tax credits, other forms of incentives. And that's everything JB was talking about. Water and space heating.
You're back now.
I was talking about how it's not just rebates, it's all kinds of incentives.
I think what you were saying was that if you go to our new website, mcecleanenergy.org, on the homepage, there's a link to rebates and offers, and it's a new feature that we have just launched with our website refresh. It allows people to select from their zip code, income level, and other information to try and identify what rebates may be available for them for the things that they're interested in. People should look for rebates before they buy. That's the best advice we can give people. Most programs are set up where you need to have gone through some kind of application process in advance of making your purchase. There's also tax rebate implications. There's a lot to consider when you make these purchases, but that's how we're helping to try and make them more affordable for people.
I've got a client that I consult with, the Shadeland Property Business Improvement District, and a number of the owners there we've been working with them to spur 150 new EV charging stations in 2024 or 2025 and 2026. All but one of them has MCE rebate opportunities. And but just every little bit, when you're talking about adding 10, 5, 20 EV charging stations to businesses, to doctors' offices, those rebates make a difference on the construction cost and the power needs. And for people who aren't aware, the Homes in Here, which I had mentioned, are rebates coming from the Federal Climate Act, and those should start rolling out in 2025, which could even increase those incentives for you to electrify your home, put insulation behind your walls, upgrade your HVAC system, and all of that. I don't know if you could share more about those programs.
I don't have any additional information about them right now. I think a lot of these programs, um, even like 2025, it's a long ways away, right? You get a lot of the information pretty close to when things are actually available or even right as they're actually available. I don't have additional information right now. I don't know, JB, if you have more.
Now, what we would tell people is that between the funding coming through the Inflation Reduction Act at the federal level and California state programs, we anticipate energy and electrification programs will continue to be funded. And each year, the types of programs and exactly how they're going to be accessed in terms of application change a little, but there is money available. We'd encourage anyone who is considering electrification to visit our website because that's where the most current information about rebates and incentives.
I want to talk about economic development and power, because you talked about MCE as a power generating organization. This is an issue for California as a whole. I know other states are facing it with the increased AI demands, the increased housing coming to the Greater Bay Area. Businesses are turning us down because it would take 3 to 7 years to get the power they need. Can you talk about that, and what is MCE's role in that, and how can everybody help foster that?
The real limiting factor in terms of the speed with which new power generation projects can come onto the grid is the grid itself. There are a number of efforts being made to both upgrade and invest in the grid and adjust the way we move power around on the grid in order to maximize the amount of power we can move across the grid every day. We are looking as a state at regionalizing the energy markets so that we can more seamlessly trade power with other Western energy markets. There's wind in other states that we may be able to access to help us offset those hours where we don't have solar generation available. Conversations are happening at the legislative level in terms of how we make those energy procurements regionally. Those efforts will help improve the reliability of California's energy market and increase the amount of energy available to us while we are continuing to invest in and upgrade our grid here in California. Jenna, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I just want to say about the role that individuals play in this transition to a clean energy economy is not necessarily clear cut. We've talked a lot about electrification upgrades. And one of the big things when people think about electricity and renewable electricity is they think about solar, or I'm going to put solar on my roof. That concept of if I put solar on my roof, then I don't need as much from the utility. And that's true, but it's more complicated. Individuals who are looking and have the resources to support this transition can be residential or businesses. It can be major business parks like Shadelands or Bishop Ranch. If you're able to have your own generation source paired with a battery, you're creating a lot of resiliency for you, but then those larger issues that JB was mentioning become less of an issue. because you're taking that electric load off the grid, which means those resources that we already have available are able to be directed to other folks who don't have the resources to put these distributed systems in place. So I think when we talk about the clean energy transition, it's a nuanced conversation, right? There's a lot of different layers, and I think there's no one solution. It's a lot of these layers of technologies and systems that are ultimately going to get us there. And if we can have more people in control of their own power on their own facility, whatever that looks like, if that's your home or your business or your school or your hospital, then we have more resources for folks who aren't able to do that for whatever reason.
That's right. And that actually brings us to the most innovative technology we're looking at as an organization. The virtual power plants we have just recently cut a ribbon on a home that's part of the BPP program. It's a real model for what we hope will continue to be funded through various state and federal grant programs. We worked with the community of Richmond to identify a pot of funding used to purchase homes that would be made eligible to low-income pools of buyers. These homes were then fully upgraded with all-electric technologies. The lower-income individuals may not typically have access to on their own in a home that they're looking to purchase new. And the benefits are twofold, right? We're looking to address communities that have been harmed historically by environmental injustices, where emissions were typically higher, leading to poor health outcomes. And we're improving the housing stock and giving an opportunity to new home buyers to get into a home that gives them solar power, battery backup, and is fully outfitted with electrified appliances. We are looking for additional funding to continue to build on that program in new ways.
I'm familiar with the VPP, the virtual power plant. Can you explain the concept for the broader audience? How does that work? What should people know about that?
The virtual power plant is right now, you could think of it like the cloud, right? It's this concept of helping people networked appliances that can be heat pump, water heating, space heating, induction cooking, really any electric appliance that you're going to put in, EV charging, solar and battery storage can be networked. When you turn them on or off, you're either pulling electricity in or potentially pushing electricity out from the battery storage or your EV. The benefit is every individual may have one or more of these appliances. And when you network them all together, you're able to turn it on and off as one big system. And it works similar to a power plant in that you're able to pull electricity off the grid during the day when there's a lot of solar energy available. So you're getting clean energy that's being generated. And utility scale projects are often being curtailed, which means they're being asked to be turned off because there's too much solar. So if you can pull that energy in, do your laundry, do your cooking, charge your car, and then power up your battery with it and discharge that battery during the hours of 4 to 9 p.m., where we have a real lack of renewable energy, you're able to make the grid cleaner. So it cleans things up for everybody because we're using more renewable energy. And you're helping address reliability issues. If you live in California, you're very aware of flex alerts and being asked to conserve power from 4 to 9 p.m. Virtual power plants make that less necessary because they're acting as a resource, essentially a power plant during that 4 to 9 p.m. period. It's a really cool model where you're relying on individuals to use their own resources and power to be a part of this larger solution for all Californians.
What's interesting is it could scale, right? You could look at large industrial users and they could get paid to shut down at a certain time. It's the homeowners and the individuals, but it's also can scale. I want to talk about this flex alerts that you had talked about. This is recorded at the end of August. And fortunately, in 2024, we haven't had one. Why have we run out of power overall on the grid? How are we addressing that for the future? And what should people be aware of?
One note that I want to make is actually that when we did have that heat bubble a couple of years ago, Flex Alerts were very successful in helping to remind people to manage their power consumption, to keep power on so that we didn't have the series of rolling black and brownouts that some people may remember from the early 2000s. Flex Alerts are a tool that the state of California and CAISO, the California Independent Services Operator, have implemented to provide communities with a warning that they are anticipating the grid is going to reach what they consider the peak of the peak, meaning that the highest demand that we will see all year may be coming. And usually that's a result of really high temperatures in our communities, because that's when we see our greatest demand on the grid. Everybody's trying to operate their air conditioning and stay cool. Often the hottest part of the day is when we're also seeing those peak energy consumption hours between 4 and 9 p.m. as people are coming home, their homes are warm, they're trying to cool them down. Flex Alerts remind communities that there is a possibility of power outage and that they need to take steps to try and protect themselves and prevent power loss by reducing their energy consumption. We work with our municipal partners to help educate them about Flex Alerts and where they can get information from the state so that they are best informed, and to try and help communicate to their constituents what they can do when a Flex Alert is anticipated. We recently held a webinar with our partners at HESO to inform our municipal partners about how they can utilize Flex Alert information in their communities. And unfortunately, it is a result of the high demand that we are seeing due to climate change. We're going to continue to see extreme peaks and weather events. Climate change drives wildfires and other kinds of weather events. Those things can also impact the grid, then causing Flex Alerts as well. Jenna, is there anything you want to add?
I think the soundbite of it's climate change, right? Things are getting hotter. When you talk to people who grew up in the area, like I grew up in Contra Costa County, we have electric air conditioning. Friends that live out in Oakland, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so hot now. I have to get a portable AC, and they never needed it before. Or my mom grew up in Dublin. That house never had AC, and they had to add AC to that house. So that's something that's happening as we're seeing climate change. Is yes, it's hotter and people are using their air conditioning more, but also just the load. People that never needed air conditioning before need it now because the heat is in places where it didn't used to be. I think also population growth. California continues to grow. There's more housing needs, more businesses, more manufacturing. As that happens, the electricity load is going to increase naturally. But air conditioning is a really big component of that.
I remember when they had that week a couple summers ago in Walnut Creek, it was like 114, 117 a couple days in a row. The CalISO that manages the overall grid, when the Flex Alert went out with the emergency text, it was almost like 4 million people shut off their lights all at the same time in response. And so I give kudos to people realizing there was an emergency situation and doing that. That's the population of San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, Fresno, and Sacramento coming offline. And that's a big milestone. I remember the following days, every organization I belong to, every nonprofit, chamber of commerce, business group, school was also sending out emails. Please manage your energy load. And I give just the California public like kudos for responding and managing that. As we move to electrification, on which the more cars we plug into, as California has commanded that all the fleets, every vehicle by 2035 has to be EV or hydrogen or something else. That's a lot more energy coming from the grid. How do we keep up with that and avoid peak demands? Because somebody's going to leave their pool pump on, somebody's going to leave their car plugged in. How does the grid handle it?
I'll let JB answer the larger question. One thing I want to be really specific about, I think, with electric vehicles specifically, because zero emissions, you mentioned hydrogen, like the hydrogen is really the other solution. But I think with electric vehicles, it goes back to the conversation that we had about the VPP, where it's about charging your vehicle during the times when the energy is available, midday when the sun is there. And that's going to be a huge part of this. And so that's why MCE's EV charging program, for offering incentives for installing EV infrastructure, is focused on workplace and multifamily properties, is because those locations are more likely to have people charging their vehicle during the day. One of the biggest complaints we get from people is, how do you expect me to switch to an electric vehicle and then not? And the reality is that's a very difficult situation for a lot of people. I have our EV set to not start charging until after 9 p.m. So I can plug it in when I get home, but it's not going to pull electricity. But better if I could go into the office and charge my EV between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m., then there's plenty of electricity available and tons of solar. So I'm also taking my zero emission vehicle and powering it with 100% renewable energy. I think there's a larger question of, for people who can't do that, what does that look like? I'll let JB chime in on that.
I think the point that Jenna is getting at is that there is not one solution to how we are going to meet those mandates for our greenhouse gas emissions, zero emissions policy in the state of California. What it's going to take is everyone doing the things that they can work in their lives, and at the same time, communities looking at creative solutions, whether it's a community solar program, as has been implemented through certain state funding grant programs, whether it's something like the VPP, which MCE is pursuing. There are microgrids that work very well in some communities to help provide reliability for critical infrastructure resources. All of those are valid solutions. Pursuing hydrogen is a way of providing zero emissions public transportation and rideshare transportation. Those are all part of the mix that allows us to achieve these goals. But most importantly, what Jenna is saying is looking at your own life and trying to understand how you can apply the goals of energy reduction to yourself. And that doesn't mean that you do everything, right? Not everybody is able to purchase an electric vehicle right now. Not everybody is able to install electrical appliances in place of gas burning appliances right at this minute. But you can start planning for those transitions and do what you can. So maybe you can't purchase an EV, but you can cool your home down in the morning before you leave for work, that you don't have to use as much energy to keep it cool throughout the day and bring that temperature back down later in the evening. Or maybe you can run your dishwasher first thing in the morning before you leave, as opposed to running your dishwasher at night after you finish your evening dishes. Those are things, small things that don't feel like they're much, but they really do add up. Californians have been asked to do this before. We made significant changes in our behavior in response to the drought conditions that we suffered throughout the 2000s. We installed water conservation technologies in our home. We learned to take 5-minute showers. It's time to apply that same sort of behavioral mindset to how we manage our energy usage.
I want to challenge anybody who's listening. If you have something with smart software, like Jenna talked about, she plug in her car when she gets home, but the software doesn't click in until after 9. I have a pool pump at home. It goes off at 3:55 every day and starts. I moved it up an hour earlier so I could be cognizant of that peak time on the grid. And if anybody has a dishwasher or a washing machine that's, I think, within the last 10 years, even, they all have delayed timer. And when I finish the dishes at night, like, I could hit delayed for 3 hours and mine goes off at midnight, but still ready to empty in the morning. But now I'm asleep. The TV isn't on. The computers aren't on. Even when it's 110 degrees, it usually cools off by midnight. So the air isn't on as high, or you have windows open. And that stuff makes a big difference to our community and to your bills.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I want to make a pitch here for smart thermostats. When I moved into this house, we didn't have that. I don't have a heat pump, space heater. I have traditional HVAC, right? But we were having a really hard time keeping our home comfortable. Forget the electricity consumption. It just was not comfortable. It was too hot in certain places and too cold in certain places. I went out and I got a Nest, which there are plenty of smart thermostat brands, but that's what I got for my home. And not only does it dramatically help with the comfort of my home, because I can be in any room and adjusting it from my phone, which is super helpful, especially when you have an infant and you're trying to keep the room the right temperature. The benefit of being able to be like, oh my gosh, it's 4 o'clock and I forgot to turn it off and I could just do it right there from my phone. To JB's point about pre-cooling, that is super helpful.
Unless you find out that you're doing it from your phone, but your significant other is doing it from the control panel and didn't know you were fighting over that.
Thermostat wars, exactly.
I want to hit on this power in the grid because we're talking about more people coming with more housing being built. How are we managing that power? I know it'll take 20, 30 years to turn over all the vehicles, but we're talking about 50, 60% of the vehicles in 5 and 10 years becoming this way. We can't get that power for economic development for businesses to move to places like Vacaville. Hayward lost out on a Rivian plant because they couldn't get powered. Vacaville can't get technology park that they want to develop because there's not enough power. There's AI coming online in the East Bay Times today, August 27th. The front of it talks about AI, and Google can't hit their climate goals because they're developing AI. There's just a lot of power consumption. And when we're talking about putting my dishwasher on later, that's helpful. But if we're losing massive businesses as a result of that, if we're talking about AI generation, how does California continue to compete and keep up with all of those demands?
Yeah. I think it goes back to the conversation that we've been having, which is it's a yes and approach, right? It is individuals running their dishwashers at different times, but it's also putting battery storage in place so that we can use that solar generation available during the day. Because there is a lot of excess electricity during the day. I think that's the biggest problem. We're not taking the best advantage of the resources available to us. We can get facilities off the grid so they're not using the load that other people could be using by doing solar and battery storage on a facility so that they're essentially completely independent. We look at the load shifting, we look at energy efficiency. That's a huge chunk of the work MCE does. We have a portfolio for $158 million for energy efficiency. Those things, while incremental, add up to a larger part of the puzzle. One of the things that's also being discussed statewide is this concept of opening the California grid to the larger Pacific Northwest and Western United States. We're connected to that larger grid all, but California's system operator operates independently from those. And so do we have the ability to work together as a collective of states to make it easier for everyone to access renewable energy? There is no one solution, and there's nothing I can say, if we do these exact 6 things, it's going to get us there. But if we continue to do all of these things and then also look at other creative solutions, so green hydrogen, other forms of storage, we've got new technologies with wave generation or other things like that. There's the reality of what we're dealing with right now. And then there's always that what's going to be here in 2 years? What's going to be here in 5 years? What's going to be here in 10 years? We never know exactly what's coming down the road. But I think doing as much as we can wherever we can is working. I think to the conversation that we had about Flex Alert, people step up and we are able to stop the power from going out. These solutions are working and we need more.
It also just came out here in August of 2024 that California achieved a major milestone in clean energy with 10,000 megawatts of battery storage coming online at utility scale. And that is a significant amount to help manage this peak demand as part of this process.
Yeah.
I want to talk, you can't talk about power and not talk about fires in Northern California. We'll have PG&E is going to come on in November. They're too busy during the potential fire season. They have it scheduled for after what they hope is the first big rainstorms. But what is MCE's role in reducing the risk of fire from power? or is that all on PG&E? How do you guys work to do that?
One of the things that has been in discussion for a while is this conversation around biomass, bioenergy sources. We don't have a lot of biomass in California. There is some legislation in place to have municipalities get more of their energy generation from biomass resources. We have several landfill gas to energy projects in our service area. We have three of them. That's taking the methane gas that is already being generated in a landfill and using it to create electricity. So that's one form of bioenergy. Biomass is often more things like agricultural waste, so farming or animal husbandry. And the other sort of component of this is potential wildfire risk foliage. That's part of wildfire mitigation is clearing foliage, things that are already dead and dropped, right? Not cutting live foliage, but things just sitting there on the forest floor. MCE's sustainable biomass principles puts in place a set of guidelines for if we are going to receive biomass energy, where does that come from? And a part of that is looking at biomass as a strategy for wildfire mitigation. That's a set of principles we're hoping will help direct some of this biomass as we move forward. Right now, the biomass in MCE service area is largely being trucked out to places where they have facilities to process this because we don't have processing facilities in our member communities. I know there's a big interest from Solano County and Marin County specifically, where they have a lot of agricultural waste to put facilities there. So that concept of wildfire mitigation and helping with this waste that is actually creating more greenhouse gas emissions because you have to truck it away. So that's the main connection that we have to wildfire and wildfire mitigation. But because we don't operate the lines and wires, we don't play a big role in the wildfire component.
The state has a goal of 2045. That's still 21 years off being 100% renewable clean energy. Where are we in terms of real progress toward that, given all those factors we've talked about, the increase demand of electrification, the increase needs of businesses and the residents?
MCE is 60 to 100% renewable energy, 95% greenhouse gas free. When we got started, we were 28% renewable compared to PG&E's 13. And the state, I believe, is now sitting at 38% renewable. In less than 15 years, we've made a significant dent in getting California toward renewable energy. Yeah, there's still a long way to go, but MCE and other community choice providers like us have done a lot towards getting California toward that goal. I always use the analogy of if you think of the electric grid as a bathtub, you only need so much water in that tub to serve everybody. When you put clean energy, clean water into the tub, there's less space for dirty water. And that's really the concept of community choice is yes, we're providing our customers with cleaner energy. They're receiving 60 to 100% renewable electricity into the grid. And the more entities that are putting clean water in, the cleaner the whole tub is going to be. We have definitely made a significant toward that.
Thank you for joining me today from MCE. We had Jenna and JB. I appreciate you talking to us about where our power comes from and how it all works. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Asch, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.